Hello family. Welcome to Morales Stories, your home for gripping African tales. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and comment. Now sit back and enjoy the drama. Lara Mbah's bare feet sank into the cracked pavement of Nkpolu-Oroworukwo Road as the early morning sun crept over the horizon. At 20 years old, she already felt the weight of the world on her shoulders. The modest wooden house she shared with her mother, Ifeoma, and her baby brother, Chinedu, had always creaked under life's hardships. But today felt different. The air was heavy with distant prayers and market chatter, yet Lara's mind was fixed on her father's last words, "Build for those who can't." When Lara Mbah vanished 3 months ago during a protest at the polluted Imo River, something fundamental shifted in Lara's life. He had stood among the crowd wearing a bright yellow t-shirt splattered with placards demanding clean water, and Lara still remembered the fear as tear gas canisters flew overhead and the river's murky current shimmered with chemical sheen. His final message, "Build, Lara. Build for those who can't," echoed in her ears like a command from beyond. When the news reported his death at the riverbank, Ifeoma had clutched Lara in a trembling embrace. That night, Lara sobbed until the first light of dawn, her father's worn wristwatch pressed against her chest. The next day, nervous and determined, Lara announced to her mother, "Mama, I'm leaving for Lagos." Ifeoma's eyes filled with tears, her husband's absence still a ragged wound. "My daughter, how will we manage without your hands?" she asked, voice trembling. Lara knelt before her, gently wiping the fresh tears. "Mama, I must try. The big city holds opportunities, maybe I can save enough. I'll send money home." That afternoon, Lara sold the few handcrafted beaded necklaces her mother had made over the years. With a tattered suitcase and a small bundle of savings, she boarded the bus to Lagos before dawn had even cracked over the palm-fringed horizon. Stepping off the bus beneath Lagos's towering skyline, Lara felt sweat bead on her forehead as she navigated crowded streets filled with hawkers shouting over the rumble of buses. Her uncle had arranged a job for her as a maid in the mansion of Deo Fashola, a reclusive tech billionaire whose camera-shy demeanor and rumored coldness had become local legend. As she wound through the neighborhood of Victoria Island, her heart pounded at the sheer opulence ahead. The mansion loomed like a fortress of chrome and tinted glass, its iron gates guarded by 2 uniformed security officers. A polished granite wall enclosed manicured lawns, and marble pillars supported a broad awning overhanging the driveway. Lara swallowed hard as the gates slid open with a pneumatic hiss. At the gatehouse, Madame Tola greeted her with an unreadable expression. A silver name badge read, "Tola, House Manager." "You must be the new help," she said flatly. "Report to the kitchen immediately." Lara nodded, smoothing the hem of her simple gray blouse and black skirt. Every detail of her worn sandals and threadbare dress felt amplified beneath the permanency of the mansion's grandeur. The foyer's chandelier gleamed like a starry constellation. The marble floors reflected the servants in crisp black and white uniforms, moving like ghostly figures. Lara cradled her broom and mop, heart pounding as she followed Madame Tola down a long corridor veined with gold accents. The walls displayed polished ebony frames holding abstract art pieces, images Lara had never understood. In the cavernous kitchen, the aroma of frying plantain and simmering egusi filled the air. The stainless steel counters gleamed beneath high-powered lights. Inside a glass-fronted pantry, exotic spices from around the world lined shelves in crystal jars. Lara set her tools aside as Irene, a matronly woman with a no-nonsense demeanor, stepped forward. "You scrub the marble around the dining hall first," Irene instructed. As Lara knelt and began scrubbing, her mind flickered to the purifying funnel she had sketched in her little notebook, a layered filter of charcoal, sand, and gravel that could remove cholera bacteria and impurities. "I see that pen in your pocket," Irene said without looking at Lara's face, "but scrap that. Your duty is here, scrubbing floors." Her tone carried no mercy. Lara forced herself to focus on the task. Each rub of the cloth along the polished floor brought pain to her knuckles, but she repeated her father's words in her head, "Build for those who can't." The pain reminded her why she had come all the way from Port Harcourt. That afternoon, though grateful for the meager wages, Lara eked out time to think about her invention. She spent midday breaks delivering iced water and juice to the staff in a tiled mess hall. Before she left, Joseph, another young helper who maintained the garden, peeked at her as she passed. He gave her a quiet nod of solidarity. "Stay strong, Lara," he whispered, before turning to water the exotic orchids. When her shift ended, she walked past the high iron gates into the dwindling sunlight. Every night, she made her way to a dingy rented room in Aja, where her mother and Chinedu awaited. The room was so small that Lara could reach each wall with a single step. A battered fan circulated muggy air as Ifeoma prepared a small plate of gari soaked in water. Lara placed her bosun bag on the cracked tile floor and set out her funnel materials. A scrap plastic framework, a handful of charcoal pieces she'd bought from a roadside vendor, coarse sand, and some fine gravel. "I want to see you safe," Ifeoma said softly, as Chinedu crawled toward Lara, clutching a faded toy whale. Ifeoma's skin was drawn from worry. "Mama," Lara whispered, "I'll return with something big, something your children and all the people of Port Harcourt can use. Stay healthy." Ifeoma nodded, tears brimming as Lara tucked Chinedu into a corner of the thin mat they shared. When the candle's flame flickered low and the ceaseless hum of Legos lulled her, Lara's mind returned to her funnel's design. In the tiny laundry area of the mansion, where thunderous washing machines rattled through the night, Lara found a corner to work on her prototype. She carefully cut scrap plastic from used bottles, molding them into funnel shapes. She layered charcoal pieces she'd crushed into coarse lumps, then added a layer of sand she'd sifted through her fingertips. Beneath lay a bed of gravel to stop large impurities. Lara tested her funnel secretly on tap water, watching as tinted water trickled through the layers and emerged noticeably clearer. 2 weeks later, the mansion's lab buzzed with tension. Deo's AI water sensor prototype had failed 3 times during a crucial demonstration. Investors on video call frowned as the red light blinked on the sensor's readout. Deo, tall and crisp in a white linen shirt despite Lego's heat, removed his earbuds and stormed out of the lab. He crossed the kitchen garden on polished marble steps until he reached the lily pond, where Lara was scrubbing in silence. He peered at the murky water pooled at the edge. "Miss Mbah," he said, voice clipped. She jumped, nearly dropping her cloth. "Sir?" He crossed his arms. "What is the pH level here?" His question startled her. Only engineers got asked such things. She gulped. "Sir, if you mean the pond water, it's acidic and likely contaminated. I can show you how to filter it." He raised a skeptical eyebrow. "Do that." Trembling, Lara knelt and explained her funnel's layered filtration: charcoal to absorb impurities, sand to trap sediment, and gravel to stop large particles. She sketched a quick diagram in the dirt with her finger. Deo picked up a small bucket of pond water and poured it through her funnel. Moments later, the water wept into a glass carafe, noticeably clearer. The head engineer and 2 lab assistants rushed forward. Using Lara's funnel as a blueprint, they recalibrated their AI sensor's internal algorithm to mimic her filter's process. A hush fell over the lab as the sensor's readout shifted from red to green. Investors on the call erupted in applause. When the meeting ended, Deo stood like a statue before Lara, whose hands were trembling. His dark eyes, usually hidden behind tinted glasses, stared at her intently. Finally, he said, "You saved the presentation, Miss Mbah." Lara swallowed so hard her pulse echoed in her ears. "Sir, I'm just..." Her voice broke. "No," he said, surprising her. "You're more than just the maid." That night, Lara hurried home to Aja, her heart pounding. Inside her tiny room, Ifeoma and Chinedu waited with anxious eyes. Lara placed a small pouch of Naira notes on the rickety table. "Mama, look." Ifeoma gasped, tears springing to her eyes. "Lara, how did you?" Lara held her mother's hands. "It's just the beginning. I'm going back tomorrow to finalize the filter design and propose mass production." Ifeoma wiped her tears. "Your father would be proud." Chinedu, clutching his toy whale, babbled something that made them both laugh. Lara lay on her mat, staring at the corrugated iron roof as the distant roar of Legos drifted in through the open window. The victory inside the mansion felt bittersweet, Her funnel had saved Deo's project, but to everyone else, she remained invisible. Yet her father's words echoed in her mind, "Build for those who can't." She vowed then and there that her inventions would bring clean water to her village, and every child like Chinedu would have a fighting chance. She closed her eyes, knowing tomorrow would bring new challenges and new hopes. The next morning, Lara arrived at the mansion before sunrise. The sun's first rays caught on the mirrored glass as servants filed through the front gates like clockwork. She entered the servants' compound through a narrow side gate, nodding to Irene, who whispered without warmth, "You're early. Keep that mind on cleaning." Lara gripped her broom, but inside, she trembled with anticipation. At dawn, Deo's voice echoed through the marble corridors. "Miss Mbah." She rushed into the courtyard to find him already surveying the estate's private well. He held a clipboard and frowned at the murky water. "The filter you built, explain it again." Lara took a deep breath, reciting the key differences: fine versus coarse charcoal, precisely layered sand, and the importance of a tight seal at the mouth of the funnel. Deo jotted notes. A cluster of engineers hovered behind him, curious and skeptical. "Build me a working model by noon," he instructed before striding away, his expensive loafers clicking against the marble floor. Lara felt adrenaline surge. She spent the morning in the mansion's garden shed, an improvised workshop where gardening tools mingled with discarded machinery parts. She sorted scrap wood, plastic containers, and activated charcoal sacks behind locked gates. With Joseph's quiet help, she assembled her prototype under the watchful eyes of two curious engineers. As the sun climbed high, Deo returned. Lara poured well water through her filter into the waiting AI sensor module attached to a sleek laptop. The readout flickered from red to green. A cluster of engineers hooped. Deo surveyed the scene, almost expressionless. "Well done," he said simply. The sound of his praise was rarer than a rainy season breeze. "Now we adapt this for mass production. Get your numbers on material costs." That afternoon, Lara accompanied one of the engineers, Mercy, to a gated supply warehouse in Lagos Island. Stacks of plastic containers lined the yard beneath a corrugated roof. Mercy negotiated with the supplier for bulk charcoal and food-grade sand. "She's just a maid," one worker whispered under his breath, but Mercy shot him a pointed look. Lara stayed silent, clutching her small notebook filled with measurements and costs. Back at the mansion, Deo summoned his board via video conference from his private study, walls lined with awards and framed prototypes. "Ladies and gentlemen," he began, "what you see on screen is not one of our engineers, but one of our domestic staff. Miss Lara Mbah has engineered a filtration solution that our AI sensors now read flawlessly." A hushed silence rippled through the board. On one split screen, investors leaned in, whispering behind glowing screens. Deo's ex-fiancée, Mareo, who served on the board, scrolled through social media posts calling Lara a mystery scrapwoman, questioning how someone so insignificant could outsmart his top team. Lara watched on a small screen from the corridor, heart pounding. Mareo's pointed criticism echoed, "Surely someone has played a prank, Mr. Fashola. I find it difficult to believe that a domestic worker could outperform our specialists." Deo's jaw tightened. "You are entitled to your opinion," he said, voice ice-cold. "But the facts remain, her filter works." The board meeting ended abruptly, an uneasy tension lingering like a storm cloud. That evening, as golden twilight bathed the mansion's facades, Lara delivered dinner trays to the staff mess. Other maids eyed her with a mix of awe and suspicion. Joseph slipped her a folded note under the table, "Future billionaire." Lara stifled a smile. Yet her joy was tempered. She knew the mansion's elite would never see her as anything but just the maid. In the main house, servants whispered that Deo's mother, Mrs. Fashola, lived on the top floor, locked away because of her dementia. Rumors claimed she wandered the halls at night, like a ghost. Intrigued and worried, Lara ventured beyond her usual routes. One midnight, she heard faint crying above. She climbed the sweeping staircase. No one stopped her. At the top floor's end, she found a heavy wooden door cracked open. Inside, Deo's mother, Edora, sat by a curtained window, trembling with a piece of bread in her hand. Lara approached slowly. "Madam?" Adamma turned, her eyes clouded yet bright with fear. She pointed at the bread. "Choke," she rasped. Lara recognized the signs: obstruction at the throat. She rushed to help, using the Heimlich maneuver instinctively. Adamma gasped as the bread dislodged. Lara fetched water and gave it to her. As Adamma's breathing steadied, she reached into a hidden pocket and pressed a small pendant, the Mbah family crest, passed down by Emeka, blank and tarnished. "Hilmit, protect this," she mumbled. Tears streamed down Lara's cheeks. "You're safe, Mama Ada," she whispered. Adamma closed her eyes, and for a moment, Lara saw a flicker of recognition, then nothing. They stayed until the first rays of dawn, and Lara guided her down the stairs. Mrs. Fishola's eyes followed her, haunted and grateful. By the time Lara returned to her quarters, exhaustion had wrapped around her muscles. She lay on her bed, breathing shallowly, mind swirling. When dawn arrived, Lara found a crisp envelope on her small table. Inside was a single sheet of paper: "New uniform. Meet me in the drawing room at 9 sharp." No signature. As she dressed in the borrowed gray uniform, her heart pounded. Every step toward that room felt like walking the tightrope between two worlds. At 9, she entered the drawing room, a grand space with floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the lagoon. Deo stood by a Turkish rug, arms folded. He gestured to a seat across from him. Lara sat, trembling. He slid a sleek tablet across the polished mahogany table. On screen was a 3D schematic of her funnel, integrated with his AI sensor module. "I want your name on this design, Lara. We launch next month. I'm paying you a percentage of all sales," Deo said quietly. Her breath hitched. "Sir, I can't accept," he cut her off. "You accept because without you we fail. And right now we need you." As he left, the weight of her achievement settled in her chest, mingled with fear. Later that evening, Lara returned home to Aja. It was past midnight, but Ifeoma and Chinedu sat awake. "Mama, look," Lara said, handing her mother a crisp envelope filled with Naira notes, more than she'd ever seen at once. Ifeoma pressed her daughter's hand to her heart. "You've changed our lives, Lara." Chinedu scrambled onto her lap, babbling happily. Lara smiled wearily. Yet a question tugged at her mind. Would Deo's circle ever treat her as more than the maid who built a better funnel? She drifted to sleep clutching her father's locket, imagining the ripples her funnel would make far beyond this mansion's mirrored walls. 5 days later, Lara arrived at the mansion just before sunset. The garden's bougainvillea glowed pink in the dying light. She kept her head down as she scrubbed the marble courtyard. Suddenly, a sleek black SUV rolled to a stop. Deo stepped out, dressed sharply in a midnight blue suit for once, something she had never seen him wear. He approached silently. "Miss Mbah," he said, voice softer than usual. He handed her an envelope. "Dinner invitation. You'll leave in 20 minutes. Wear this." Inside was a simple black dress belonging to the mansion's staff wardrobe. Lara's heart pounded. She had never been invited into Deo's world beyond her duties. 20 minutes later, she emerged from her tiny quarters wearing the borrowed dress. Her uniform apron replaced by a fitted sheath that reached her knees, she felt like an imposter. Joseph, who had been gardening, caught her eye and offered an encouraging smile. Irene passed silently, a flicker of surprise crossing her face. Lara wondered what the other staff thought as she walked down the front steps, escorted by a chauffeur in crisp white. Deo waited by a silvered Bentley. Lara slipped into the back seat, the soft leather cool against her skin. They drove through Lagos's shimmering skyline toward Victoria Island's newest rooftop restaurant. As they ascended the spiral staircase to the top floor, golden lights from afar glimmered across the lagoon. The restaurant was intimate. Only a handful of tables overlooked a panorama of city lights. A waiter seated them beside a glass railing. Candlelight flickered on Lara's face, casting dancing shadows. She clicked her heels together awkwardly behind the table as Deo slid into the seat opposite. He removed his phone from his pocket and silenced incoming alerts. Rather than discussing work, he studied her quietly. Lara, nerves prickling, began to sip the sparkling water placed before her. "Lara," he said, voice gentle but steady. "Tell me about your dreams." Her heart fluttered. She took a breath. "Sir, I want to build a school for girls in Port Harcourt who can't afford tuition. I want every child to have clean water in their home." Deo's brow softened. "I remember your sketchbook. Your father's words must live on through you." Lara's throat tightened. Their conversation flowed like water, her childhood memories of fishing by the river, his memories of growing up fatherless after his own mother died when he was young. She shared how she fled her village when cholera surged, how she sacrificed schooling to provide for her mother and brother. He admitted his own fear of getting close to anyone after his ex-fiancée publicly betrayed him on live television. At the main table, they ate fragrant jollof rice and succulent grilled tilapia. Spotlights glimmered overhead while a discreet steady stream of black-gloved staff refilled their glasses. Unbeknownst to them, paparazzi on the next rooftop snapped blurry images. Tech billionaire's mystery girl? These images would soon shatter their fragile tranquility. When dessert arrived, mango sorbet with freshly chopped mint, Deo paused and gently touched Lara's hand. She flinched at the contact, then relaxed as his deep brown eyes locked onto hers. A moment hung suspended, two souls from different worlds connecting across a candlelit table. Suddenly, a vibration from his suit jacket drew his attention, a few board members on video feed hovering behind a second camera. He scowled, slipping out of his seat. "Lara, come with me." They wound down a private staircase to his study. He slammed the door shut, leaning across his desk. "I need to explain this," he said sharply. He pressed play on his tablet, revealing comments from investors. "She's clearly using him. Too risky, and fire her before she ruins your reputation." Lara's heart pounded. "Sir, I didn't," she choked on the words. Deo's chest heaved. "Moreo called me earlier. She claims you're here only to dig for your own gain." His shoulders slumped, as if carrying the weight of the world. "I believed in you," he whispered. Tears threatened to spill from Lara's eyes. She shook her head fiercely. "Deo, I never." He cut her off. "No explanations. Your place is back in the kitchens, until I can prove I'm wrong." He turned away, voice cracking. Lara's vision blurred as she hurried toward the door, stomach pounding like a drum. She stopped at his desk, hand trembling on the handle. "You took me out of the kitchen once. Now you put me back." Her voice trembled. "I can't stay, sir." She bowed her head and left without a backward glance. That night, Lara packed her few belongings and fled the city back to Port Harcourt. On the bus home, tears streaked her dusty cheeks as she remembered the candlelit dinner, his warm smile, and the promise he had made. Her phone buzzed with a single notification: Tech Billionaire's mystery girl quits. She dropped the device onto her lap, numb. When she arrived at her family's small compound, her mother's eyes lit with relief. "My child, you came back," Ifeoma exclaimed. "Tell me what happened." Lara sank onto a stool, revealing her black dress, now crumpled. "Mother, I don't belong there," she whispered. "I'm just a maid." Ifeoma placed her hands on Lara's cheeks. "You are so much more. Don't ever doubt that." That night, as the scarlet sunset faded over the Imo River, Lara let her tears fall freely. She recalled her father's final words: "Build for those who can't." She held his tarnished pendant in her hand. "I will make you proud," she vowed through trembling lips. And though her heart ached, she resolved to rise again, this time on her own terms. Back in Port Harcourt, Lara's return was like the hush that falls over a village when the rains end, sudden, telling. Neighbors gathered, offering small meals of okra soup and bread as if to comfort her wounded spirit. She felt hollow, but she knew she needed to survive. She spent her days repairing broken generators, fixing old phones, and catching drinks with local mechanics who refused to charge her more than a few coins. Each small job paid just enough to keep her family fed, but her hands ached each night from miles of hard labor. In late afternoons, she returned to an abandoned neighborhood compound where she had permission to set up her makeshift workshop. On a rickety wooden stool, under a rusted metal roof, she cleared away debris and laid out her funnel prototypes. She had learned from Deo how to refine the circuit boards in his AI sensor, knowledge she stored in her mind. With these insights, she tweaked her design, embedding a small digital pH meter inside a plastic housing that communicated readings to a mobile phone. Without Deo's lab or engineers, she scavenged old cell phone batteries and repurposed them to power the microchip. Neighbors called her Madam Engineer, though some gossiped that she was fooling herself. Yet Lara worked tirelessly, driven by memories of Mrs. Okoye's child saved from cholera. She tested her new filter on Imo River water until it ran clear. When a group of local fishermen brought her an ailing boy dribbling black vomit at the riverside, she filled a battered plastic jug with filtered water, instructing the mother to mix it with rice water for rehydration. Word of mouth spread, "That girl from Lagos makes magic water." One evening, a representative from River Sense, a local NGO, visited her humble workspace. He wore a green polo shirt emblazoned with a sleek logo of a blue drop and circuit lines. "Lara Mbah?" he asked. She nodded, wiping sweat-stained hair behind her ear. "I saw your story on social media. Someone posted about the filter you tested on that child. We want to partner with you." A lump rose in Lara's throat. "Partner how?" she asked. "We'll fund 500 filters and help you train locals to build them. In return, you'll help us map water quality across River State." That night, Lara lay awake with excitement beating in her chest. Finally, her funnel would reach beyond her cramped workspace. Meanwhile, in Lagos, Deo Fashola awakened in a penthouse 3 floors above the city. The tech world buzzed about Lara's filter. The viral video of her tasting river water and producing clear drops had racked up millions of views. Deo scrolled through hashtags. #GirlWhoCleans, #MadeGenius, #BillionaireFilter. He felt a hollow ache. He had forced her to quit just as she had begun to shine in his world. He recalled her tentative smile that night at the rooftop restaurant, the way the candlelight danced in her dark eyes. By morning, he booked a drive to Port Harcourt, his mind set on finding her. He drafted a message to River Sense, "I'd like to speak with Ms. Mbah," then hesitated and deleted it. He needed to see her in person. With a handful of engineers in tow, he drove 8 hours down the coastal highway, past oil bunkers and verdant rubber plantations. When the city's heat slammed into him at the Port Harcourt exit, his crisp suit clung uncomfortably. He handed the driver directions scribbled on a scrap of paper. At dusk, Deo arrived at Lara's workshop, a squat concrete structure with no door, just a tattered curtain. Lara stood outside, leaning over a charcoal brazier where she boiled river water in a battered aluminum pot. When she saw him, her shoulders pitched forward in surprise. "Sir," she whispered, nearly breathless. I quit for good reason." She turned to stomp away, wiping soot from her palms. He stepped forward, voice trembling with unspoken urgency. "Lara, wait." She froze, then faced him with arms crossed. "You said you wouldn't see me again." His dark eyes softened. "I realized I was wrong. Look around." He gestured to the brazier and jars. "Your filter, this is far bigger than that mansion. Without you, our sensor was meaningless. I've seen how many lives you're saving now." He reached into his jacket pocket and withdrew a slim case. "This is not a ring. It's a prototype. Our engineers built it using your design, plus some AI tweaks. We want to scale it up together." Lara's breath caught as he opened the case. Inside sat a sleek, cylindrical filter, smooth white plastic engraved with Blue Stream. "We start a social enterprise," he continued. "Filters at a price anyone can afford. We'll hire locals, train them, empower them." She touched the filter reverently. Tears sprang to her eyes. You came all this way for me?" Deo's stern expression softened into a rare smile. "Because you taught me that brilliance can come from anywhere." Some distance away, Ifeoma and Chinedu watched from the veranda. When they realized who stood by Lara, they gasped. Deo's driver finally parked. A small group of engineers disembarked, carrying boxes of filter parts. Lara hesitated a moment, then sprinted into her mother's arms. Ifeoma wept as Deo approached with gentle steps. Chinedu reached out, and Deo knelt, shaking his hand. "You're the genius, young man. he murmured. Chinedu giggled, leaning into Deo's milky blue sleeve. A crowd had gathered by now, neighbors craning their necks to see the billionaire among them. A cameraman from Riversense snapped photographs, live-streaming the reunion, Maid Meets Billionaire in Village Showdown. As darkness fell, they worked together assembling filters. Lara supervising, Deo's engineers wiring tiny pH sensors to the plastic bodies, and Ifeoma helping measure charcoal and sand into small pouches. By midnight, they had assembled 50 working prototypes. That night, Deo and Lara shared a quiet meal of gari and fried plantain under a moonlit sky. He listened intently as she detailed her plan for a tech school for girls and named it after her father. "I'll fund it," he said softly. "Anything you need." Lara's heart soared. Once again, her dreams felt within reach. As they parted at dawn, he pressed a folded envelope into her hand. "Expenses. For the project. I want this to succeed." She nodded, tears shining in her eyes. Walking home with the first filter prototype slung over her shoulder, Lara felt a fierce pride. Her life as the girl who cleans had transformed into something far greater. The world was beginning to see her brilliance. And by morning, tens of thousands across social media would chant one tagline: "She was just the girl who cleans. Now she's Mrs. Billionaire's partner in life and business." But Lara knew the journey was only just beginning. 3 months later, a billboard atop a refurbished water treatment facility in Port Harcourt proclaimed, "From maid to mogul, Lara Mbah, co-founder of Bluestream." The logo, a stylized droplet of water glowing like circuitry, hovered above her smiling face. In that moment, Lara absorbed the realization: her funnel had become a national brand. The Bluestream headquarters occupied a renovated warehouse by the riverside. Inside, the air smelled of machine oil and freshly cut tube steel. Across the floor, dozens of women sorted charcoal, sifting it through fine mesh sieves. Others measured sand and gravel into neat containers, gluing on stickers that read, "Bluestream Filter, pure water for all." Rows of brand new filters stood ready for shipment in sleek boxes. In a glass-walled meeting room overlooking the operation, Deo and Lara sat before their board of investors, all nodding with approval as she outlined her expansion plan. "This quarter, we aim to distribute 10,000 filters across Rivers State," Lara said, voice confident, eyes shining. "By partnering with local government and NGOs, we'll train community volunteers to maintain and repair Bluestream units at no cost." One investor raised his hand. "What about rural areas with no steady electricity for the sensor?" Lara responded calmly, "Our sensor is solar-powered with a backup hand crank. We tested it in remote villages last month. It functioned flawlessly." The investors exchanged impressed glances. After the meeting, Deo lingered in the hallway as Lara gathered her notes. He grabbed her hand. "You were incredible," he said softly. Lara smiled, squeezing his hand in return. "We make a good team." That evening, Bluestream hosted a launch gala at a hotel ballroom in Lagos. Under glittering chandeliers, socialites, government officials, and celebrities mingled at white-clothed tables. A giant screen flashed images of villages celebrating clean water, children drinking from Bluestream filters, and smiling mothers. The master of ceremonies introduced Lara as the visionary who turned humble dreams into a national movement. When Lara took the stage, she wore a tailored navy dress sewn by a local designer and a single silver pendant bearing her family crest. The audience erupted in applause. She paused, then scanned the crowd until she found Deo, standing near the back with a proud smile. "When I first arrived at Mr. Fashola's mansion as a maid," she began, voice steady despite the quiver in her heart, "I never imagined I would be standing here today. I come from a fishing village where many families still struggle to drink safe water. My father, who lost his life asking for clean rivers, taught me that innovation and compassion can change everything. And thanks to a team of brilliant engineers, dedicated community workers, and one very special partner, we're making that dream a reality." The crowd rose to its feet. Lights dimmed as speakers boomed. "Congratulations to Lara Mbah, Bluestream co-founder." Deo stood and applauded, tears glinting in his eyes. Backstage, Lara's mother and brother waited with a small bouquet of flowers. Ifeoma's cheeks were wet with tears. When they embraced, Chinedu, now age 5, climbed onto her lap and whispered, I'm proud of you. Lara placed a gentle kiss on his forehead. Me too, my baby. 2 days later, a Lagos talk show host interviewed Lara on live television. You're a national inspiration, the host gushed. What advice do you have for young entrepreneurs? Lara leaned forward. Believe in your ideas, no matter how small you think they are. If you see a problem, trust yourself to solve it. And build a team that believes in you, even when others doubt. Never let your title define your worth. At home later, Lara found Deo and her family waiting. Deo bent to Chinedu's level, handing him a small remote-controlled boat. For the engineer in you, he said with a wink. Ifeoma handed Lara a letter of recognition from the river's state governor praising her work. Lara held both gifts to her chest, her heart full. Over the next weeks, Bluestream mobile units in colorful trucks rolled out across rural communities. Bluestream kiosks, pop-up stands staffed by local volunteers, offered free water testing services. News vans followed, broadcasting stories. Maid-turned-mogul build school, village children dance for clean water. Port Harcourt's visionary changes lives. Lara's name trended across Twitter and Instagram under the hashtag #BlueStreamHero. One afternoon, as she toured a newly completed tech school for girls, she overheard 2 teenage students giggle as she passed. One said, "That's Lara Mbah. She used to be a maid." Her friend's eyes widened. Now she's a billionaire's partner. The girls smiled shyly at Lara, and she waved. For a moment, she felt the full circle of her journey, the dusty pavement of Port Harcourt to the polished marble of Lagos mansions to this blossoming schoolyard. She whispered to herself, "Father, I did it." That evening, Deo and Lara returned to the school's new library, a modest room lined with textbooks and computers. He guided her to a corner where a plaque read, Emeka Mbah Tech Academy, in memory of a dreamer. Lara's eyes brimmed with tears. "I named it after him," she said softly. Deo slid his arm around her shoulders. He would be so proud. Lara's mind drifted back to the first filter she built behind the mansion's laundry room, and to that moment when Deo recognized her brilliance. The world now called her Mrs. Billionaire's partner in business, but she clutched her father's worn pendant as a reminder. Her true worth would always come from her heart and her inventions, not any title. The morning of Lara and Deo's wedding dawned crisp and clear on Victoria Island. Lagos swelled around them, cars honking, pigeons wheeling overhead, vendors shouting, "Suya! Suya!" But inside the mansion grounds, a hush of anticipation reigned. A red carpet had been rolled from the gates to an elegantly staged altar beneath a white drape heavy with jasmine and lily of the valley. White chairs lined the aisle, and crystal chandeliers hung from tall, tinted ceilings. Photographers buzzed like fireflies capturing every detail. Lara stood in a private suite on the mansion's top floor, sinking her feet into soft white slippers. She wore a hand-stitched dress from her village in Imo State, a simple white fabric embroidered with blue threads forming water droplets across the bodice. A single diamond pendant, gifted by Mrs. Fashola earlier, lay against her collarbone. Joseph adjusted the veil, his hands gentle as he tied it behind her head. Tears blurred Lara's vision as she thought of the little girl who once filtered water for a sick neighbor. Downstairs, Deo stood before a full-length mirror in his best suit, navy wool with a subtle pinstripe. He straightened his tie as his best man, Theo, entered. "You look," Theo paused, "is that really you smiling?" Deo smiled, a warmth that hadn't graced his face in years. "She changed everything," he murmured. Word had spread across social media. Hashtag Maid becomes Mrs. Billionaire, hashtag Bluestream Wedding. Fans camped outside the mansion gates, hoping for a glimpse. Cameras perched on rooftops across the lagoon, streaming live. The moment Lara stepped onto the red carpet, flashbulbs popped like fireworks. At precisely 11 o'clock, the ceremony began. A string quartet played Ave Maria, as Lara's father's framed photo, her only link to him, rested atop a small flower pedestal near the altar. Mrs. Fashola emerged first, a single silver streak visible in her hair, still slightly tentative but determined to walk beside her son. She wore a fuchsia lace gown that complemented her dark skin. Her eyes glistened as she offered Lara a small flower basket to scatter petals. Lara descended the staircase with Ifeoma on one side and Deo's black and white tuxedoed uncle on the other, two worlds converging into one. As she walked, memories flickered, scrubbing marble floors, midnight pump fixes, that first glimpse of Deo's surprised gaze. Her lips trembled as she reached the altar. Deo reached out, taking her hand. The officiant, a respected imam who had guided Deo's family for years, smiled warmly. They recited vows they had written together, Deo pledging to support Lara's vision for Bluestream and the Tech Academy, Lara promising to stand by Deo's side in every challenge and triumph. As they exchanged rings, a simple gold band for Lara and a platinum one inlaid with a blue sapphire for Deo, the crowd erupted in cheers. Cameras from around the globe captured the moment. Instead of a first dance, Deo guided Lara to unveil a sleek, solar-powered water tower behind the altar. For the people of Obiara village, he said, voice carrying across the crowd. He lifted a small lever, and two water spouts dripped clean water into waiting jugs held by rural children flown in from River State. The crowd erupted in applause and tears. On live stream, kids from her village screamed her name. The hashtags spiked, hashtag Lara Water Queen, hashtag Bluestream Impact. As dusk fell, guests moved to the reception tent, where lanterns glimmered beneath a canopy of twinkling lights. The feast included jollof rice, suya, pounded yam, seafood pepper soup, an extravagant spread merging Lagos sophistication with home-style flavors. A reporter asked Lara, "Is this a dream come true?" She touched her diamond pendant and smiled. "It's far more. My father's dream lives on through me, and in each soul that drinks clean water." Deo took the mic for a toast. "To my partner, my wife, who was once just the maid. You taught me that compassion and innovation know no boundaries. Together, we build dreams." Glasses clinked. Lara leaned into Deo as the band struck up a high-life remix of a classic wedding song. They danced among family, friends, and colleagues as sparklers flared around them. Later, as the last guest departed, Lara and Deo stood alone on an upper balcony overlooking the lagoon, the city lights reflecting on the water. "Can you believe it?" Lara asked, voice muffled by emotion. Deo wrapped an arm around her shoulders. "You believed it," he said. "You changed the world." Lara rested her head against his chest, the cool night breeze playing with her veil. She pressed a hand against his heart. "This is just the beginning, Mbah." He kissed the top of her head. "And it's all because you were brave enough to dream." Below, the newly unleashed water tower continued to drip fresh water, a quiet testament to how far a single idea, and a courageous heart, could go. Lara Mbah, once the girl who cleans, had become Mrs. Billionaire. But more than that, she was a builder of dreams, a beacon of hope for thousands who would now drink water made pure by her hands, and by love. The end. Love the story? Smash that like button, hit subscribe, and become part of the Morales Stories family. Your support helps us bring more powerful African tales to life. Thanks for watching. We can't wait to share the next one with you. See you soon.